And the credit for all the development goes to David Detwiller, who is regarded as the father of veterinary cardiology. He also pioneered the comparative cardiovascular studies. A further work of Charles Roger Smith and Stephen Ettinger firmly established the clinical specialty of veterinary cardiology in small animal patients. For many years, veterinarians examined their patients only with their hands, a stethoscope, and radiograph. Many of the early studies in cardiovascular diagnosis concentrated on characterization of heart sounds and murmurs in small and large animals. Eventually, the electrocardiogram became established as an important diagnostic study in veterinary cardiology, with many investigators, many workers, many clinicians publishing on normal values in various species. The EKG was popularized by Steve Ettinger, Gary Bolton, and Larry Tilley. These workers, these practitioners, these clinicians also brought our attention to the frequency of various rhythms and conduction disturbances. So, dear participants, keeping this in view, the, we have brought to you this webinar on the topic electrocardiography in companion animals, basic to practice. I am sure that this would help the practicing veterinarians to make good diagnosis for various ailments and manage the cardiovascular diseases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, like to brief about the speaker of today's webinar, Dr. K. Satish.
Of today's webinar, Dr. K. Satish Kumar. Uh, Dr. K. Satish Kumar, Professor and University Head, Department of Medicine, College of Veterinary Science and Animal Husbandry, Rajendra Nagar, P.V. Narasimha Rao, Telangana Veterinary University, Hyderabad, Telangana State. His area of specialty is canine internal medicine and with special reference to canine cardiology. Special skills include non-invasive diagnostic techniques, electrocardiography, ultrasonography, and echocardiography. His significant achievements include the very prestigious awards, including Dr. P.K. Das Gold Medal for Small Animal Medicine in the year 2019, Dr. D.C. Blood Gold Medal, ISVM for 2014, SVVU University Meritorious Teacher Award, Young Scientist Award, Special Mention Faculty Award, and he has guided 8 students as majors, and his students have also brought laurel to him and to the area of specialization by winning various prizes, awards, and medals in the presentation and on the thesis topic. Now, I request Dr. K. Satish Kumar to present the webinar, and hope this webinar is going to help all our participants because most of them were very much enthusiastic and excited to learn about the EKG. Over to you, Dr. Satish Kumar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi, and all the faculty who is behind this webinar here. It's really my privilege to be a part of this webinar. And a good afternoon, all the participants. I hope my voice is clear to everyone. Yeah. All right.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
yeah,
Voice and video both are clear.
I would like to share my present entire screen. Entire screen. Only window. Yeah. Afternoon. Yeah. Is my presentation visible? Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, good afternoon once again, all the participants. The topic for today's presentation is electrocardiography in companion animals. Its basics to the practice. Well, electrocardiography, commonly called as ECG or EKG, is recording the electrical activity.
Sir, sorry to interrupt, sir. Please present your presentation again because it's someone, Dr. Chunmoy, he started presenting. That's why your presentation is not visible.
Okay, is it not visible now?
So please present again.
Shall I do it
Please
again?
present again. I'm just checking, sir. One second.
हाँ बंद है ना मैंने कर दिया उसको
Yes, sir. You can make it full screen.
Yeah, I'll make it. I'll make it. Oh,
Yes.
screen.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Done, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is it visible? Is it visible or not?
It's visible, sir, but not on full screen.
I made it full screen also.
Yes, sir.
No, sir, it's visible, but please put on the whole screen view, sir.
Please start slideshow, sir.
Yeah. One second.
So please put on the full screen mode, sir. That
Just
will
a
be
minute.
more easy for the. Yeah.
Just a minute. What about now?
Not visible, sir.
Oh.
Not visible, sir.
Okay.
आ रहे हैं, दोबारा हैं।
Microphone. So, no, enter screen is not. Can you see it now? Hello?
सर ये ओपन प्रेजेंटेशन।
क्या हो गया?
Yes, sir,
अब नहीं दिखा। Are you able to see it now?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Just tell me whether it is coming in slideshow mode.
Yes sir, yes sir, it's okay.
Okay, all right. So, sorry for the delay. Well, the topic of ECG. Well, the ECG, as you all know that, this is nothing but a recording of electrical impulses on the surface of the skin that actually happens at the heart. So it is something very mesmerizing kind of thing, what we usually never look into. Something is going on inside the heart, somewhere in the body, but we are able to record it from the surface. So this is the miracle of electrocardiography. We call it shortly as ECG or EKG. So now we'll be learning about its basics, and also we will, I wish my presentation will make you thorough, clear to practice it from the next hour onwards. Well, the person what we are looking at here is the person behind the electrocardiography. He is Einthoven. He is the person who first invented electrocardiography. This is the machine what you are seeing here. And he has taken his electrocardiography ECG by a galvanometer kind of electrocardiography machine. What you are seeing, it's such a big, huge machine. And this is the dog, Jimmy, where this Augustus is another scientist who also involved in this electrocardiography. And he is the first person who took the dog's ECG. So the William Einthoven, who was seen previously, has received Nobel Prize also. He was actually a Dutch physiologist who received Nobel Prize for inventing the ECG machine and electrocardiography in the diagnostic procedure. So by passing through so many generations, now we have reached to an electrocardiography machine of this size, which is a very portable, compact machine. And even in nowadays, we have a small machine like this with a small, maybe 2 inches into 1 inch, size of machine, which can be recorded. ECG will be recorded using a mobile app. So this is one what we are using in the present situation in our hospital, and many of the practitioners also using this. So this will give us a lead to in a PDF format. So this is a mobile ECG machine which will not be costing more than 8,000 rupees. I'm not promoting the machine. So it is a very compatible and easy to carry. You can carry this in your pocket. Now, starting from, imagine the machine that has fit in a one big room, that complete ECG has reached to your pocket, where you can carry with small. So this is a brief history of the electrocardiography. Then coming to our topic, what is this webinar is about, and what we are going to learn in this webinar, and what is that we are going to refresh ourselves in this webinar. So these are the various subheadings I just categorized and subdivided, so that will be easy for all of us to understand. So I think there are students also in the participants list, and practitioners and senior people, faculty members of, the participants are of varied level of knowledge, but my intention is I would like to concentrate more on the basics, and I concentrate more giving emphasis on the basics, so that the students also can able to cope up and pick up the basics. And the seniors and other faculty members and the colleagues and who all are thorough with the ECG, please don't feel bored about it, because it is not to bore anybody, but it is to recapitulate whatever it is that is present and giving more emphasis to the basics and prepare it to the students. Okay, so we start with the first component. It is the ECG again. The electrocardiography or electrocardiogram or the graph, it is nothing but a graphic representation of cardiac impulses, electrical impulses that happen through the heart, which is going to have a depolarization and the repolarization activity of the cardiac muscle, nothing but the systolic and diastolic phase of the heart. And what happens when the cardiac impulse passes through this, and what is the graphic representation will denote to us. The graphic representation helps us to study the heart rate. It helps us to study the rhythm of the heart, and it also helps us to understand any conduction abnormalities within the conduction system. Apart from this, ECG also helps to identify the chamber size, enlargement of chamber size. Sometimes it also helps us to identify the effusions, pericardial effusions, and will give us an idea about the myocardial diseases. And interestingly, it also helps us to identify non-cardiac diseases like GDV, gastric dilatation and volvulus, and disease of other organs like pancreas. And it also helps us to identify and to diagnose certain electrolyte abnormalities. So electrocardiography, though it is primarily been used for the diagnosis of cardiac diseases, apart from the cardiac diseases, ECG also helps us to diagnose or think of certain other non-cardiac conditions also. But the ECG or the electrocardiography will not give us any information related to cardiac contractility. This will not give us any information related to cardiac mechanical activity. So that is why we can say that ECG alone will not give us any complete information about the heart. But this is one of the diagnostic protocol of diagnosing cardiac diseases. So before understanding the electrocardiography or the graph or anything else, what we should also primarily should know is about the conduction system, the cardiac conduction system. Can you see my cursor here on the screen? Anyone can answer? Can you see?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes I'll be asking you some questions because I don't know whether I'm continuously or not. So yeah, this is a heart. These are the auricles, atria. This is the right atrium, the left atrium, right ventricle, and the left ventricle. Okay, so the sinoatrial node, which is also called as the pacemaker, this is the nucleus of the conduction system. The conduction system is nothing but the system in which the cardiac impulse or the electrical impulses of the heart are passing through. So this sinoatrial node is the base for the generation of the cardiac impulse. So the impulse is generated at the sinoatrial node and it is transmitted to the other side of the atrium, the left atrium. Also it reaches to the atrioventricular junction where the AV node is present. So from this AV node, it further proceeds through bundle of His and also left and right side bundles that spreads to the left and right ventricles, and through the Purkinje fibers it spreads to the complete myocardium, and where the impulse that has generated at the SA node gets dissociated here. So while the cardiac impulse that starts from SA node and passes through AV node and spreads to all the four chambers of the heart, it causes depolarization effect. And when there is a depolarization effect, it leads to contraction stage that is called as the systolic phase. And once it reaches the Purkinje fibers and spreads to the complete myocardium and then dissociates, it is what is called as the repolarization stage, where the heart is again picking up for the next beat. So this is the conduction system. This conduction system is very much important for us to understand the components of the ECG later. Well, we'll just quickly move forward. These are the ECG leads, which normally includes the crocodile clamps commonly available in electrical shops here. We can make it atraumatic by spreading out these sharp edges. and we can fix the ECG leads, clamps here. In the forelimb, it is fixed at the point of elbow for the right and left, and on the hind limb, it is at the point of stifle joint on the right and left. So once the leads are fixed, once the cables are fixed, the animal looks like this. The animal should be positioned on right lateral recumbency, and it is always important to take the ECG on, non-conduction tabletop. So it should not be a metallic table. If you have a metallic table, place a rubber sheet over that. See that it becomes non-conduction. So these are the two leads that are fixed in the forelimb at the point of elbow, and these at the stifle joint. So this is how the animal should be positioned on the right lateral recumbency. So this is the left elbow, right elbow, and the left stifle joint, and the right stifle joint. So normally the right and left forelimb leads and clamps, or the electrodes we call them, and the left hind limb electrode are the three electrodes that are going to take place in the generation of the ECG graph. Most of the machines, they come with only 3 electrodes, which can be fixed for 2 forelimbs and the left hind limb. And some of the machines are also provided with another extra electrode that will be fixed to the right hind limb. Actually, this right hind limb electrode has got nothing to do with the generation of the ECG. This acts as a ground. That means this acts as an act. So if you look at this, so ignoring the right hind limb electrode, if you look at these 3, that is the forelimb, 2 electrodes fixed to right and left, and the left hind limb lead, it gives us some sort of a triangular shape here. Okay, so it gives us a sort of triangular shape. What is that? So if you fix these electrodes in this way, if you fix the electrodes of the ECG in this way for the 2 forelimbs and 1 to the right left hind leg, so it forms a triangular shape like this. If you take a dorsoventral view of an animal that is with which fixed with the electrodes. So this is the right forelimb, electrode is fixed at the elbow joint. This is the left forelimb, the electrode is fixed at the elbow joint, and this is the left hind leg where the electrode is fixed at the stifle joint. So this put together will give us a triangular shape. This triangle in which the heart is located in the middle. So this triangle is called as Einthoven triangle. So this Einthoven triangle is designed by Sir Einthoven, the founder of electrocardiography. So this, what is this triangle? What it shows actually, if you look at the electrodes clearly, the electrode that is fixed at the right atrium has got some polarity, maybe a negative or positive or something like that here. So if you look at it closely, the right arm, the electrode is negatively charged here. Okay, and here the left arm, the left forelimb, it is positive and negatively charged, and here the left hind leg, it is 2 positively charged. What is this? Some of them are 2 positively charged, one is positive and negatively charged. Then what is that actually taking place here? So normally the cardiac impulse travels from one electrode to the other electrode, one pole to the other pole, and the poles or the electrodes are fixed for both the limbs. That means 2 limbs, and this is 2 poles. That is the reason why this is called as a bipolar. 2 poles, a bipolar, and it is fixed to the limbs. That's why it is called as a bipolar limb lead system. Okay, so the bipolar limb lead system is the common means that have been practiced in veterinary side to record the electrocardiography. So that is why it is called as a bipolar limb lead system. What is this bipolar and why these electrodes are helping us? So we have mentioned it as a lead 1, lead 2, lead 3. What is lead again? A lead is the electrical activity that is taking place between 2 electrodes. Okay, so the electrical activity that is measured between 2 electrodes, the positive and the negative electrode, is called as a lead. Suppose if the electrical activity is measured between right forelimb and the left forelimb, it is called as lead 1. If it is measured between right forelimb and left hind leg, it is called as lead 2. And if it is measured between left forelimb and left hind leg, it is called as lead 3. So put together, we have 3 leads here. Okay, so when the electrical impulse is passed through these leads, it will generate waves at different angles to the heart that is present in the middle, which will give us a three-dimensional activity of the electrical activities. So one lead will give us only one dimension of the current. If we talk about lead 1, it will give us a one-dimensional current activity. If lead 2, it gives us this dimension, and lead 3 and this dimension. If we talk about all the three, it becomes a three-dimensional electrical activity. But in veterinary practice, we use and we concentrate mostly on the lead 2. Lead 2 is taken as a standard lead to study the electrocardiographic activities in veterinary, that is in dogs and cats, in almost all the veterinary patients. Why? See, if you look at this image, we try to focus on the lead 2. It is the net depolarization. What is lead 2? It is a net depolarization that is moving through the ventricles. And these ventricles that are normally directed towards the left leg. So it is very much clearly directed towards the left leg, where the lead 2 is, this is oriented towards left leg in dogs. And when this is directed towards the ventricles, predominantly towards the left ventricle, okay, and towards the left leg, that will generate a much clear positive QRS complex. So that means this is traveling from negative pole of right forelimb to the positive pole of left forelimb. When the cardiac or the electrical impulse is traveling completely towards a positive electrode, that will give us a completely positive QRS waves. So because here the electrical impulse is traveling towards the left leg, and that is directed towards ventricles, and which is directed towards the ventricles and covering from the base to the apex of the heart, this lead 2 will give us complete abnormalities that is located within the conduction mechanism of the heart. So that is the reason why we use lead 2 very commonly. And apart from this, we also have 3 other augmented limb lead system, where we have AVR, AVL and AVF. I didn't mention here, but those leads also will be taken care and will be considered whenever we are going to study about the mean electrical axis. So I'm not going to touch much about the mean electrical axis here, because that will result in so much of confusion for you. So what this actually gives us about the mean electrical axis? The mean electrical axis and the normal mean electrical axis is that points towards the left ventricle. This is how the left ventricle is positioned here. And the normal MEA is somewhere between 40 to 100, we can say. And sometimes it is mentioned as 45 to 105 also. But what is happening here? The mean electrical axis will give us a hint about intracardial or intraventricular conduction blocks. So as we have seen previously, the sinoatrial node, from there it reaches to AV node, and from there it reaches to left and right branches, and it spreads to the complete ventricles. Suppose if there is any blockage, of conduction in the right side of, the right conduction pathway, where the electrical impulse is supposed to travel, but because there is a block, it is unable to travel through that. So in those conditions, this mean electrical axis will help us to identify, yes, there is a block in that, there is a conduction block in this. So you can see here, an intraventricular conduction block will result in deviation of the mean electrical axis towards the ventricle that is expected to be depolarized. That means in those conditions, if there is a block in the right branch of the conduction system, the heart will be deviated, the calculations will be deviated towards the right side. It is called as a right shift. And suppose if there is a block in the conduction system of the left ventricle or the left myocardium, this will be deviated towards the left side. So this is how the mean electrical axis will help us to identify whether there is any conduction blocks, and specifically whether it is in the right side branch or the left bundle branch, or whether it is towards the right fascicle or the left fascicle. Okay. Well, that's what is actually happening and how this electrical impulse is traveling through. As I told you, when the electrical impulse is traveling towards the positive terminal, that will give us a positive peak, okay, a positive amplitude. And suppose if it is traveling towards a negative terminal, that will give us a negative amplitude. to make it very clear, so this is what we have been seeing the heart in that Einthoven triangle. So this is the base of the heart and the apex. The base of the heart is negatively charged, and the apex of the heart is positively charged. Suppose in that cardiac conduction system, this is where the right atrium, the SA node is present, from where it reaches to atrioventricular node, and from there it reaches to both the ventricles and also to the left atrium. So while traveling in this way, if the conduction of the cardiac impulse is traveling directly towards the positive terminal, that will give us a peak amplitude of a positive amplitude. And suppose if it is going in reverse way, that will give us a negative amplitude. And suppose if it is deviated, slightly deviated from the positive, that will give a low amplitude, but it is positive. And suppose if it is deviated slightly from the negative terminal, that will give you a negative amplitude, but which is slightly low. And suppose if it is going perpendicular to neither towards positive nor towards the negative, that is called as a biphasic or isoelectric sometimes. Okay, so this is how once the impulse or the cardiac impulse is generated or started from SA node here, it reaches to AV node, and from there it reaches to both the ventricles through the myocardium, and which will help us, which will give us a graph that is having three QRST waves with positive and negative deflections. Okay. To make it a little more clear about this, this is a diagrammatic representation. I would like to give a little more emphasis on the generation of ECG graph. So this is the SA node from where the cardiac impulse is generated, and from here it reaches to AV node. Also it goes to the left atrium. So during this process, the P wave is generated, and once from here, the waves, they travel through the other side of the heart, and here it is traveling, perpendicular but slightly towards the negative terminal. So we get a straight line or isoelectric wave and a negative small amplitude. And then once it travels directly towards the positive terminal, that means it travels to the myocardium, completely reaching to the ventricles. That will give us a peak of a positive amplitude. And once again the waves, they are going back, that means covering the other portion of the heart or the ventricles. So that means they are traveling away from the positive terminal, will give us a negative point, going back. And then once the waves are dispersed, or when they are completely depolarized, and it is called the stage of repolarization, where we get a T wave. So this is how the wave that is generated in SA node travels through AV node and completely covers all the ventricle, all the myocardium, and it gets dispersed with the Purkinje fibers. That will give us the complete PQRS-T wave. And in this process, the generation of ECG is completed. So the ECG wave, once it is formed, it should include the PQRST, the different waves that are present, and they are nothing but the depolarization and repolarization activity of the heart with the cardiac impulse. So here, I think with this background, we can understand the P wave is generated when there is atrial depolarization or contraction, and that means the wave that is traveling from SA node to AV node. And the QRS wave is the result of the ventricular contraction or depolarization, and the T wave is the result of ventricular relaxation or repolarization. So these are the three different phases which will help to have a complete PQRST graph. Okay, so this is how once the cardiac impulse, it is called as a one cardiac cycle. Once the impulse that has generated a SA node, if it completes till the repolarization, so that will end up with the generation of an ECG graph. So this is how the ECG graph is produced on a graph paper, and they are that is help us to study. Okay, so this one point is like, we never say that this is a normal graph. Never use the term normal graph or good graph. So to say that to define a normal graph, the correct term is normal sinus rhythm. So this is a normal sinus rhythm that is generated during the electrical activity of the heart. So this contains the P wave here, the Q, RS, and the T. So P, QRS, and the T. So look for this. What we have to do? What should we study here? What should we look for when there is an ECG graph with us? What we have to look for it? First of all, we have to look for whether there is a presence of P wave, presence of QRS wave, and the presence of T wave or not. And also see that each P wave should be followed by QRS. And once the QRS is completed, it should be followed by the T. And once the T is done, there should be a small pause. And then again the P, QRS. So each wave should start with the P and end with T and should have a QRS in the middle. We should look for that. That is the basic thing for us to study about the ECG graph. Okay. What we can able to do, like what are the other things we can study within this ECG? First of all, we will study the rate, heart rate. Heart rate will be studied based on the ECG. So there are different principles or the formulas to study the heart rate. The easiest way that I study here is number of small boxes. You see, this is an R wave. These are all the R waves. Okay. So calculate the number of small boxes that are present between two R waves. So this is nothing but a graph paper, where each graph paper is divided into 5 horizontal and 5 vertical lines. That means 5 into 5, 25 small boxes. So if you calculate them in vertical way, there are 5 lines here. So there are 5 small lines or the small boxes in between one big box. So try to calculate the number of small boxes between two R waves. That may be somewhere around here 5, 10, 15, maybe half here and half here, maybe somewhere around 20. So how to calculate the heart rate? Heart rate is calculated 1500 divided by number of small boxes that are present between two R waves. One point I forgot to tell you, here actually the ECG graph is generated or it is produced with the velocity as amplitude and on the time. So these two are to be taken consideration. So normally there are paper speed machines. They have two different paper speeds, 25 mm and 50 mm speed. What does this 25 mm and 50 mm indicates? That means the paper speed, the paper that moves from the machine and the graph is generated is 25 mm per second. And if it is 50 mm of paper is printed out per second, that is called as 50 mm per second speed. And if it is 25 mm of paper is printed out per second, it is called as 25 mm per second speed. So this is, I'm talking about 25 mm per second speed. Number of small boxes, 1500 divided by number of small boxes between two R waves will give us the heart rate. And see here, roughly there is almost the same time interval between two R waves, but we have some other conditions where the time interval between R waves may not be equal between different cardiac cycles. Somewhere it may be 3, somewhere it may be 5, somewhere it may be 4, somewhere it may be 3, 2, like that. So that means when there is unequal time interval between two R waves, then we have another formula, that is calculate the number of R waves in 6 seconds of time. Okay, so try to calculate number of R waves in 6 seconds of time and multiply that with 10. That will give you the heart rate. So this is the basic formula for calculating the heart rate.
Seems like the speaker has left the meeting. He will resume soon. Please bear with us. There is some technical problem. There might be internet issue from the speaker point of view. As a stop to speaker is reconnecting again. There was an internet issue. We apologize for inconvenience caused to you.
Well, is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Nilesh?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Yes. Is it looking like normal sinus rhythm?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, right. Yeah, we are here. I don't know, there was some technical issue, it was disconnected. For the inconvenience here again. So once this is how the rate, the electrocardiography ECG rate will be calculated. Once the rate is done, we have another parameter to record. That is the rhythm. So rhythm is nothing but the time interval between the two R waves. Time interval between the two R waves should be always and always equal. If the graph that has generated has equal time interval between two R waves, it is called as rhythmic graph. We call it as the rhythm is fine. We call it as a normal rhythm. Okay. And suppose if the time interval between the two R waves is not equal, and we call it as arrhythm, that means the rhythm is lost. That's why it is called as an arrhythmic graph. And the third point what we can also study with an ECG is like the amplitude. Look at the amplitude. This is the peak of the wave. This is the amplitude of P wave, and this is the amplitude of R wave, and this is the amplitude of T wave. So we have to study the amplitude also. This is what the basic things that we will be studying whenever we have an ECG. Okay. Then coming to the abnormalities of PQRST. Now we are entering into the abnormal findings of an ECG graph. So we will start with the P wave abnormalities. Okay, we have three images here. See, this is a normal image. See, for every wave, if I say for example a P wave or the QRS wave or the T wave, we have an amplitude and we have, this is the width, or we call it as the duration. So if you talk about the P wave, the normal amplitude of the P wave should not be more than 0.3 to 0.4 small boxes. So one small box is equal to 0.1 millivolts. So if you say that in millivolts, we say that you should not be more than 0.3 or 0.4 millivolts. That means you should not cross more than 3 or 4 small boxes. And the width is also should not be more than 1 small box. Okay. So we have the first abnormality is if the P wave amplitude is increased. That means if the P wave amplitude has crossed more than 3 and 4 small boxes, we call it as increased P wave amplitude. And this P wave amplitude is increased because the P wave has to travel a longer distance from the sinoatrial node to the AV node. It is traveling a longer distance than the normal. That means the P wave is taking much time to travel from the sinoatrial node to AV node. And this happens when the the particular right atrial size increases. So when there is a right atrial dilatation, the distance traveled by the sinoatrial node from the within the right atrium to the AV node is increased. So when there is increased distance, then that will give us an elevated P wave amplitude. So this is called as a P pulmonale. So that indicates right atrial dilatation. Okay, this is the graph where you can see here. And similarly, we have another condition which is called as a P mitral. Here, the wave that is generated at the SCA node on the right side is traveling to the left atrium. So here it is again taking long time to travel to the left atrium. That means there is dilatation of left atrium. So when there is dilatation of left atrium, the distance traveled by the electrical impulse or the cardiac impulse in the left atrial myocardium is more. So that will give us a wide P wave. So this is very easy to understand that when there is right atrial enlargement, P wave becomes more elevated. When there is right atrial enlargement, the P wave becomes wide. So the widened P wave is called as P mitral and the elevated P wave is called as P pulmonale. And we have R wave abnormalities. So this is one abnormality where you can see the elevated R wave. So just like the P wave, normal P wave amplitude should not be more than 3 to 4 small boxes. Here the R wave, as far as the R wave is concerned, it should not be more than 2 to 3. It should not be more than 4. It should not be more than 4 big boxes. That means it should not be more than 2 millivolts. So if it crosses more than 4 big boxes, then that indicates the R wave amplitude is big. And this R wave amplitude is elevated or increased amplitude of R wave is noticed whenever there is left ventricular enlargement or whenever there is left ventricular dilatation. Similarly, opposite to this, if the R wave amplitude is very low, if the R wave amplitude is decreased, then that is an indication of effusion. That may be pleural effusion, or that may be an ascites. In those conditions also there is a shortened or low voltage. We call it as a low voltage QRS complexes. We also call it as a low amplitude R wave. And here you can see, try to concentrate on the peak of R waves. R wave is elevated here, has come down, and then elevated, has come down, elevated, come down. It is something like a wavy pattern of R wave amplitude is seen here. This is called as electrical alterance. And this electrical alterance is noticed whenever there is pericardial effusion. The heart will be swinging within the pericardial fluid that is present around the heart. So this is again an interesting finding. If the ECG graph is showing electrical alterance, this is an indication of pericardial effusion. And we have another interesting finding on the R wave, which is called as a notch in the R wave. It's called as a notched R wave. This is an indication of fibrosis of the heart, or conduction blockage, or it may also indicate ischemia. So this is about the R wave abnormalities, may be elevated or too low or notched, or electrical alterance. Then coming to QRST, here as we have studied that this is a P wave and this is a Q, this is R, and then S and T. If we have a deep Q wave, or if we have a deep S wave, so deep Q and deep S wave both denotes right ventricular enlargement. Elevated R wave indicates left ventricular enlargement. The deep Q and deep S wave indicates elevated dilation of right side of the heart and the right ventricular dilatation. Okay, and the other abnormality that we can also come across with QRST is the width of the QRST. That's also called as the duration. Just like the P wave, as I told you, the P wave width or the duration should not be more than 1 small box. That should not be more than 0.04 seconds. So similarly, the QRS also should not be more than one small box. If it is more than one small box, then that's a problem. That's an abnormality. So this is a quite interesting finding we notice with the Doberman pinchers, particularly Doberman dogs or narrow-chested dogs, where uh, the increased time interval between the QRS complex or the widened QRS complexes indicates dilated cardiomyopathy, particularly in DCM dogs. Then coming to the T wave, if we imagine that this is a diagrammatic representation, if we imagine that this is a normal T wave, if it is very low voltage, low peak like this, that indicates hypokalemia. If it is peak, elevated, that indicates hyperkalemia. So you may ask me, what should be the optimal elevation or the amplitude of T wave? Yes, the T wave should not be more than 1/3 of the R wave. Okay, suppose R wave is of 4 big boxes, the T wave should not be more than 1/3 of that. That means it should not be more than 1.5 big box. If it is more than that, then we can say that it is an elevated T wave. So if there is an elevated T wave, that is an indication for hyperkalemia, increased potassium levels within the blood. And another interesting finding what we can study with T wave is like QT. If there is an increased duration between the QT, if there is a prolongation of QT wave, that is an indication of hypocalcemia. Yes, this is an interesting feature for us to diagnose eclampsia in bitches. Dogs, the early mothers, which have whelped within 24 hours, will be presented with epileptic kind of seizures or tetanic spasms or some sort of nervous symptoms. Most of the times we get confused whether it is a brain disorder or epilepsy or seizures. So in those cases, if you take an ECG, if you notice that there is a prolonged QT wave, that it itself indicates that the animal is suffering with hypocalcemia, and that is a case of eclampsia. And next to that is opposite to this. If the Q3 interval is shortened, that is an indication of hypercalcemia. So this is how the T wave will give us very good information about the electrolyte status. Okay, so that is all about the abnormalities of PQRS T waves. Then coming to the cardiac arrhythmias, this is again most important component of electrocardiography or ECG, and most of the times these arrhythmias are fatal. So this is the point where we have to concentrate on, and if you notice an arrhythmias, treatment should be given immediately. Okay, so we have two different pages here. The left side is normal heartbeat and the right side is arrhythmia. You can clearly differentiate. If the heartbeat is with rhythm, we say it is a normal heartbeat, and if the rhythm of the heartbeat is lost, we call it as an arrhythmic or arrhythmia. So what are those arrhythmias? Okay, so the ECG graph that is generated here, this is a normal graph and this is an arrhythmic graph. Well, it is very simple. Arrhythmia, that means no rhythm in the cardiac cycle or the cardiac function or the cardiac beat or the heartbeat. We call it as arrhythmia. This is an abnormal rhythm, otherwise simply called as. So when there is an abnormal rhythm, we have so many arrhythmias. So these arrhythmias includes all the rhythms, abnormal cardiac rhythms, except bradyarrhythmia and tachyarrhythmia. Brady is low and tachy is faster. Okay. Why these two, bradyarrhythmias and tachyarrhythmias, they are nothing but the sinus arrhythmias. We'll be discussing later. And as I told you, most of these arrhythmias are life-threatening, though some of them are not so serious. So we have almost 5. I would like to discuss about 5 important arrhythmias that are commonly noticed in dogs and cats. So they are sinus arrhythmia, atrial fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia, premature beats, and AV blocks. Then coming to the first one, sinus arrhythmia. So we have seen a sinus rhythm, normal sinus rhythm, where the rate, rhythm, and amplitude of all the waves are uniform, normal, common. That's what it is called as a normal graph. Here, there is arrhythmia. That means the distance or the time between the two R waves is not normally present. They are different between two R waves. That's why it is called as arrhythmia. So this is a sinus arrhythmia. This results from the variations in the vagal tone, and that is associated with the breathing pattern or the respirations in the dog. So dogs, they have a different varied kind of breathing or respirations, and this is where the heart rate is affected. That means the ECG is affected because of the breathing pattern here. So what is important here is to identify the heart rate. Heart rate, if you calculate the heart rate will be normal. That means heart rate remains normal if you calculate it for a minute. But what is differing here, it is the rate differs with the inspiration and the expiration. So the rate will be slightly increased when the dog inspires, and the rate will be slow down when it exhales. So it gets altered with the breathing pattern, inspiration and expiration. That's why it is called as a sinus arrhythmia. This is very common in case of dogs, nothing to worry about because it has got a high resting vagal tone. But only thing, if you notice this arrhythmia in case of dogs, that might be abnormality. So as far as dogs are concerned, sinus arrhythmia is quite normal. So this, to give you a pictorial depiction here, this is an ECG. Try to try to calculate the time interval between the R waves. It is almost same between the two R waves. That's why it is called as a normal sinus rhythm. Look at the right side graph, the lead to here. There is an increased time interval between these first and second R wave, and then gradually decline, and then maintain, and then there is increased time interval. So this is called as arrhythmia, and this could be a sinus arrhythmia. Why I say this could be? So yes, this can be either normal or that can be abnormal even. So to differentiate this, to differentiate whether this is really sinus arrhythmia or it is or is it a result of any conduction abnormality? So to differentiate this, we have a test called simple atropine test. What we do is like, so this is the graph what we have studied, what you have seen previously lead to with arrhythmia. So when this patient is treated with atropine at the rate of 0.04 mg per kg, look at this graph. The graph will be converted into little bit of tachycardia. Okay, heart rate increases, but the arrhythmia is lost. So if a case of this type of ECG is presented, and if that ECG graph is reverted to normal ECG graph or a near normal ECG graph with atropine test, then this is exclusively, we say it is a sinus arrhythmia. And we have another case here. So look at this, P QRST. We have a P here, and there is no QRST, and we have PQRST extra. Yes. So if you look clearly, there is an increased PQ interval here. So this is a conduction block clearly. So this is an AV block. So to differentiate whether this is an AV block or is it a sinus arrhythmia, if you do the atropine test, this is the result. So the rate has increased. There is slightly tachycardia, but the time interval between P and Q has not changed. That means still there is a block. That means this is not a sinus arrhythmia. This is a result of AV block, whereas this is a result of sinus arrhythmia. So that is how we can differentiate sinus arrhythmia from conduction abnormalities. Do you follow me? Anyone can respond. Can you able to hear me? Do you follow me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I just get confused because previously it got disconnected, so I was a little worried about. So I'll be checking it anyway. So the next arrhythmia is atrial fibrillation. Yes. Again, we have two small videos here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we have two small videos, and the left one is normal, where the electrical impulse is charged, generated at SA node and is passing through the normal conduction pathway. Whereas here, if you look at, there are multiple conduction impulses are generated multiple places, okay, and they are generated and they are passing through very vigorously and speedily. This is what is called as a multiple re-entrants of circuits. It's not a single entry of a circuit like a normal heart, but it is multiple re-entries of cardiac circuits that are taking place in the atria and giving rise to multiple beats per minute. So this is called as atrial fibrillation. This is the mechanism behind the atrial fibrillation. But to generate these multiple impulses or circuits in the atria, what is actually required is a big atrial mass. So this big atrial mass is comparatively commonly seen in giant breed of dogs like Saint Bernard or Great Dane. So these breeds, they have a big size of atria. So that is why it is quite common in case of giant breeds. This we can say a physiological in case of giant breeds. But if this happens in a toy breed like a Pomeranian or a cat, then it is an abnormal. So this is the basic thing what we should be able to differentiate as far as the atrial fibrillation is concerned. And if it happens in toy breeds, it indicates that there is a significant cardiac disease that is a result of atrial fibrillation, and that cardiac disease is nothing but enlargement of atria, that may be atrial dilatation. Okay, so if we have a graph of atrial fibrillation, it looks like this, where there are irregular ventricular rate with very much peak R waves, but there is no P wave here. The P waves are not commonly noticed, but the peak elevated QRS waves are noticed, and this is a typical graph of atrial fibrillation. So the ECG, lack of P waves, and irregular supraventricular rhythms, either that may be with tachycardia or without tachycardia. So the treatment of atrial fibrillation includes to slow down the heart rate, that is crossing beyond 200, 250 or 300. So we have to reduce the heart rate and bring it back to a target heart rate. As I told you, if it happens in heavy breeds or giant breeds, there is nothing to worry about. But if it happens in smaller breeds, then we have a treatment for that. We have a combination of calcium channel blockers, or we can go for beta blockers. Or sometimes if the dog shows any congestive heart failure signs, we can also go for a positive inotrope end of track here. Yeah. So this is one ECG from the Doberman, where we can see there is no clear P waves before the QRS complexes here. So this is from the Doberman pinscher with DCM. So look at the QRS complex. The width of the QRS complex is more than one small box. That means excuse me. Yeah. So we can see the QRS complexes. We can see a notched R wave. We can see wide QRS complexes, but we don't see clearly the P wave. So this is a typical ECG finding of an atrial fibrillation case, but this is from the Doberman. And now, after treatment with calcium channel blockers and the beta blockers, maybe after 2 months of time, we could take this graph again. And here, there is slightly change in the heart rate. The tachycardia has slowed down here, but the P waves are not still prominently noticed. So this is how the atrial fibrillation is, or the ECG will look like. Then coming to the ventricular tachycardia, well, this is the ventricular tachycardia, where the ventricles will be discharged frequently, more number of times, and this is a very fatal arrhythmia. This is life-threatening arrhythmia, and this is very commonly noticed with a primary cardiac diseases. So the primary cardiac diseases like DCM, it may also be noticed in boxers, that is associated with arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy. So this is going to be fatal, and this ventricular tachycardia will become ventricular fibrillation and then death many of the times. So when we notice ventricular tachycardia, treatment should be given very immediately. So this is how the ventricular tachycardia ECG will look like, the lead to, where we notice only and only R waves, QRS waves, nothing else, no P wave, no T wave, only QRS waves. So if you notice this kind of graph, that is ventricular tachycardia, and look at the heart rate, tachycardia, heart rate is almost maybe more than 300, 250 to 300 here. Okay, so what treatment we should give? We need to reduce the heart rate here. The ventricular tachycardia should be brought down to the near normal of the targeted heart rate, where we go with 2 mg of lignocaine intravenous bolus. So intravenously, lignocaine can be given at the rate of 2 mg per kg. That will help to reduce the heart rate and bring it back to the normal level. And in very severe cases, if it doesn't respond to the conventional treatment, we can also have other drugs like amiodarone or procyanamide at the rate of 5 mg per kg intravenously. Okay, but we have another interesting point here. What we have seen previously is ventricular tachycardia, where the heart rate is more than 180, 200, 250 per minute. We have a slow ventricular tachycardia, where the heart rate is less than 180, and this is called as accelerated idioventricular rhythm. But this accelerated idioventricular rhythm also gives us a similar type of ECG graph, what we notice with that of ventricular tachycardia. So how to differentiate it? If the heart rate is less than 180 beats per minute, we say that it is an accelerated idioventricular rhythm, and it is called as a slow ventricular tachycardia. And we don't need to treat these kind of cases, because when there is an accelerated idioventricular rhythm, there is no much compromising with hemodynamic properties of the patient. So as long as the hemodynamics are not changed, so there is nothing for us to treat a cardiac patient. So when we notice this accelerated idioventricular rhythm, it may not be considered for treatment. Well, this is a graph, ECG graph with ventricular tachycardia, where you can see only P wave, only QRS waves. So what is again, one more point what I would like to mention here, it is like this ventricular tachycardia can be of uniform similar type of QRS waves, okay, or it may be of different types. Look at here, this is another different type of QRS. This is another type of QRS waves here, and they are different type of QRS waves. If we have multiple different types of QRS waves, we call it as a polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. So when we have a polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, so treatment should be given immediately. Okay, and this is one what I was talking about, accelerated idioventricular rhythm, the lead to. Here it looks like a tachycardia, but there is a small pause and arrhythmia here, and the heart rate is maintaining here again. So this is called as slow ventricular tachycardia, where we do not require any treatment on this case, because the heart rate is not more than 180 beats per minute. But we have a case of this ventricular tachycardia, or the monoformic or polymorphic, so we need to treat it immediately. Then coming to the premature beats, to understand about the premature beats, for our convenience, it is mentioned as dividing the heart into 3 portions: the ventricular portion, the atrial portion, and the junctional portions. If the beats or the premature beats, they originate in the atrial portion, we call it as atrial premature beats. If they originate at the junctional portion, we call it as junctional premature beats, and if they originate in the ventricular portion, we call it as ventricular premature beats. So in other words, they can be divided into 2: ventricular premature beats and supraventricular premature beats. Supraventricular premature beats are nothing but the beats that originate above the ventricular portion, and they are Yeah, supraventricular premature beats. Okay, so the supraventricular premature beats are of two types: the atrial premature beats and the junctional premature beats. Anything went wrong?
No, sir. No. 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 No.
Okay, all right.
No, sir. It's all
So
right.
that's how we can differentiate the premature beats into ventricular and supraventricular premature beats. So, as this is what about we have studied two main categories: supraventricular beats and ventricular beats. We call as VPCs. So the premature contractions are very much common in geriatric patients. In aged patients, in senior patients, they are very much common, and they're also associated with electrolyte abnormalities and other systemic diseases. Okay, so this is how normally the SA node is the basic place where the cardiac impulse should be generated, but sometimes instead of this SA node, they will be generated from other ectopic foci. So when the electrical impulse or the cardiac impulse are generated away from or beyond the sinoatrial node, somewhere about in the atrial area or somewhere in the ventricular area, that will result in the premature beats. So that may be atrial premature or supraventricular premature beats if they are generated within the atria away from the SA node, or that can be a ventricular premature beats if they generate within the ventricular myocardium. So the ECG characteristics of atrial premature beats, they are very, very clearly we can differentiate. The P wave may be superimposed on the preceding T wave. So this is an ECG graph here. We have a P, QRS and T. We have a P, QRS and T, then the P, QRS and T. Here there is no P wave. Here the P and the T wave are merged together. Otherwise we can say that the P wave is superimposed on the preceding T wave. So this is what indication of atrial premature beats or atrial premature complexes. So this is on the graph here. So we have PQRST here. The T and the P wave is merged. So this merging of P and T wave or superimposing of P wave, the preceding T wave, is an indication of atrial premature complex. Next, what is ventricular premature complex? They are the weight, but Bijay kind of QRS complexes, again without P waves. Previously, the P wave is superimposed over the T wave, but the QRS wave is clearly seen. Here, the QRS wave is Bijay. It is some sort of abnormal. It doesn't look like a normal QRS wave. At the same time, there is no P wave preceding to this. So this type of abnormal ECG is called as ventricular premature complexes. Okay, these ventricular premature complexes can be single morphology or maybe due to different morphologies, and the polymorphic with respect to the ventricle. So here you can see we have a different abnormal ventricular premature complexes instead of a typical positive peak of QRS wave that may be a biphasic wave or that may be negative wave. So this is what is called as a polymorphic appearance of ventricular premature complexes. So for these kind of cases, usually we don't require any treatment because these atrial premature and ventricular premature complexes, if it happens in an asymptomatic patient, we doesn't require any treatment. But if it is seen in a patient with symptomatic signs or with any manifestations of heart failure, so then we have to go for the treatment with respect to beta blockers like sotalol or atenolol, etc. Then coming to the last component, that is atrioventricular block. Well, this is again an interesting kind of arrhythmia where we can able to clearly differentiate which portion or which branch or which fascicle is blocked, and then what type of degree block it is. So AV blocks are basically, they are divided into 2-3 different types. The first degree AV block, and we have a second degree AV block, which is again have 2 or 3 different types, and what we have is the third degree AV block. but it is very easy for us to differentiate. If you see at this normal ECG, as I told you, a sinus rhythm will have a PQRST waves with equal durations between P and Q and equal durations between T and P. So it should be a rhythmic wave. But if you look at the first degree AV block graph here, what is happening is there is increased duration between PQ. Compare this duration with the normal that I have presented above. So there is increased duration between the PQ, increased duration between the PQ. If the PQ interval is increased, then that is an indication of first degree AV block. That means there is something wrong in the conduction of the electrical impulse from SA node to the AV node, and from where it is traveling to the next ventricles. Okay, so gradual or increased PQ duration is an indication of first degree AV block. Then coming to the second degree AV block, the PQRST will be continued and the P wave will be sometimes missing the subsequent QRS waves. So only P wave is seen with the absence of QRS waves, then followed by the PQRST. So this is called as a second degree AV block. And the third degree AV block is the PQRST wave is followed by multiple P waves with absence of QRS waves. If one P wave with absence of one QRS wave is noticed, it is called as a second degree AV block. And if the multiple P waves are missing the subsequent QRS waves, then it is called as the third degree AV block, where there is complete dissociation between SA node and AV node. In those cases, it results in the third degree AV block. And what about this type 1 and type 2 second degree AV block? So this is here I would like to mention very clearly. So as we see here, look at the PQ interval. The PQ interval is gradually being increased. There is increased duration between PQ wave before the PQRST wave is missed. That means this is a second degree AV block, but there is gradual increase in the PQ interval before the QRS wave is missing. So this is called as Mobitz type 1 second degree AV block. Whereas in Mobitz type 2 second degree AV block, the PQ interval remains the same, but after few cycles, the QRS wave is missing. Okay, so this way, if it is missing the QRS wave without any alteration in the gap or the duration between the PQ wave subsequently, then it is called as Mobitz type 2 second degree AV block. But either it is a Mobitz type 1 or Mobitz type 2, the primary thing what is missing is one P wave is missing the QRS during the cycle, then followed by the PQRS waves. If multiple QRS waves are missing with multiple P waves, then it is called as a third degree AV block. And again, for your comparison, this is the first degree AV block where there is increased PQ interval. In second degree AV block, that is Mobitz type 1, as we have seen, there is gradual increase in PQ interval followed by an absence of QRS wave. And in second degree Mobitz type 2, the PQ interval remains the same, but there is absence of QRS wave. This is how we can able to differentiate Mobitz type 1 and type 2, type 2 kind of second degree AV block. Then we have a second degree AV block, which is 2:1 block. That means one normal cardiac cycle followed by a P wave with missing QRS. Then we have a normal PQRS waves, and then we have a P wave with missing QRS wave, then followed by a normal PQRS. So if you have a regularly missing up of QRS wave with P wave after every one normal cycle, it is called as a 2:1 kind of block, a second degree AV block. But as we have seen, if there is a complete coordination or dissociation between SA node to the AV node, then that is called as a third degree AV block, where PQRST will be proceeded with multiple absence of multiple QRS waves, then followed by one PQRST or only single QRST. So it is completely abnormal kind of rhythm, we notice, because it is an abnormal, a very abnormal kind of rhythm, and that is due to the blockage of AV node. This is called as the third degree atrioventricular block, which is also called as junctional escape. So, what about the treatment for this? What about the treatment for these AV blocks? Normally, the first degree and Mobitz type 1 kind of second degree AV blocks are, vagally mediated. So, they are related to the vagal tone, they are related to the vagal nerve. So, it may be related to sinus arrhythmias. So, there is no need to treat for these things, but again, as we have seen previously, so to confirm this, whether it is sinus arrhythmias or it is really due to any blockage related conduction abnormalities, we have a test, as we have discussed. We have a test like atropine test can be done and can be differentiated. But the treatment is indicated when we have a other blocks like Mobitz type 2 or third degree kind of blocks. If it is Mobitz type 2 or third degree blocks, we can treat them symptomatically, and sometimes we need to treat them with the most sophisticated kind of surgical procedure, that is by the pacemaker transplantation. So this is all about what we have learned, and to conclude, as as I told you in the beginning, the ECG is just one means of diagnostic tool. That is not completely a diagnostic one where we can depend upon to treat a case. So it need to be involved with other diagnostic procedures like radiography, echocardiography to come up with the diagnosis. The take-home message is like treat the disease, but not the ECG. Thank you. Are you there?
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I now invite Dr. Adi
Yes.
to give vote of.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful presentation. And this particular
Your voice is unclear.
webinar was uh, webinar with complete information, and as far as the students are concerned, they were very much eager to know about the ECG
Yeah.
and how to place the leads and how to record the ECG.
Yeah, hello?
Hello? Hello? Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah. You're audible.
Hello?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Hello? Hello? Am I audible, sir? Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Information to all of us. And this, I am sure
I think there is something wrong with your microphone.
this has definitely
Madam,
helped
we are
our
unable to-
students to know
We are
more
unable to hear you.
about the yes. So students must have definitely learned how to record the ECG, what are the different ways, how they are generated and all. So this was a very comprehensive yet very concise lecture of yours, Dr. Satish. We are very grateful that you have spared your. Is it? No. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Dr. Aditi, we could not hear you.
Sir,
Yes,
one thing I
ma'am.
would like to ask, how to find out the
Yes,
valvular
yes, madam.
defects
Yes.
by the ECG?
Am I audible to Dr. Satish?
Yeah, now it is okay, but previously we could not hear anything.
Okay. Okay, there was some problem. I apologize for that, sir. Sir, your presentation was wonderful, and we really thank you for sparing your valuable time and information with our students and all the participants. Because most of them, they are very much scared of ECG, how to read the ECG, and how to place the leads and all. So basic concepts, I hope now all the students and the participants are clear with it. And if there are any questions, query from the participant side, they are most welcome.
Hello, madam. How to find out this valvular defect
So
with the help of
yes, sir.
electrocardiography? Valvular defect can be
So
diagnosed.
it would be better if we ask this to the, yes, sir. I am putting this in front of the speaker. So one of the speaker wants to know how to diagnose valvular diseases on the
Yes,
basis
yes.
of ECG pattern.
Yeah, this is what actually, it is, we cannot diagnose everything about the heart with making use of an ECG. The best way of diagnosing valvular disease is echocardiography. The Doppler mechanics and Doppler echocardiography will give us complete idea about the valvular disease. But the valvular disease can be suspected by looking at the ECG. That is something like kinking of ST wave. We call it as a ST coving. ST coving is one of the abnormality where we detect when there is a valvular disease. But again, that is not the confirmation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any
So
other
there's a
question?
question. Yeah, there is a question asked from one of the participants. So can you explain about the detailed after depolarization, DAD?
Yeah, it is delayed after depolarization.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this delayed after depolarization is commonly seen in in the patients with digoxin toxicity. Digitalis toxicity, digoxin toxicity
Okay.
is delayed after depolarization, and yeah, this begins actually after repolarization, and the repolarization is completed, but before another action potential, but before another normal conduction system of the heart is generated, the arrhythmia occurs. So that is why it is called as delayed after depolarization. So there is delayed after depolarization activity is seen. So this is not commonly noticed, but it is noticed in digoxin toxicity patient. Is that clear?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Sir, can we get the details of the machine you said, no? 8,000 rupees. That correct person number.
Hello.
Details. Details.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible, sir? Yeah. One question is how to differentiate between sinus tachycardia and so we will put it, but let us
Hello?
first stick on to the questions, queries asked by the
Yeah.
participants. How to differentiate between sinus tachycardia and supraventricular tachycardia? Hello? How to differentiate between sinus tachycardia and supraventricular tachycardia? Hello, Dr.
Yeah, no,
Satish, am I audible?
your voice is breaking actually.
Now is it clear, sir?
Yeah.
How to differentiate between sinus tachycardia and supraventricular
Okay. Sinus tachycardia and supraventricular
tachycardia?
Yeah, sinus tachycardia and supraventricular tachycardia, right? Yeah. Sinus tachycardia it is a sinus rhythm. Actually, it's a sinus arrhythmia, sinus tachycardia, where the heart rate is somewhere less than 150 or 160. Okay, and in supraventricular tachycardia, the heart rate will be more than that, more than 250. That's the one thing. And second thing is, we have a clear wave. That's what we're talking about. In sinus tachycardia and sinus arrhythmia, we have sinus arrhythmias. QRST waves are commonly seen. They are very clearly noticed in the ECG graph. But in case of supraventricular tachycardia, because the heart rate is very much above 200 to 250, we don't find the T waves clearly. Sometimes there is superimposing of T and T. So the heart rate will be more than 250 and clear T and T waves are seen in supraventricular tachycardia, whereas the heart rate is less than 150 and very clear QRST waves in case of sinus tachycardia. That's how we can differentiate. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, the next row, how to measure the boxes. This you have covered in detail.
There is something wrong with your mic. Hello, can you repeat the question? Hello, Dr. Aditi, can you repeat the question?
Hello.
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Dr. Aditi, can you repeat the question? Hello?
So the voice
Yeah,
is
I could
echoing
hear
actually
your
now.
question also.
Yes, sir. Now you can hear. I'll repeat. Yes.
Yeah.
How to interpret the graph for different abnormalities? Like
Yes.
kindly show how to. Yes, sir, I'm repeating. Am I audible, sir?
How to interpret?
Hello?
How to interpret the
I don't know
graph?
what is the problem. Now, am I audible, sir? Yeah. Yes, sir. How to interpret the graph for different abnormalities? Kindly show.
I'm sorry, Dr. Aditi, I could not get your voice clearly.
How to interpret the graph for different abnormalities? How to measure the boxes for amplitude and weight?
Okay. Yeah. See the amplitude and the duration of the time measured in a graph paper. A graph paper, can I show you? I can't share it now. Can I share it now? Yeah. See, the graph paper is divided into 5 small boxes. Okay. So the amplitude is expressed as lines and the duration as the horizontal lines. So a big box consists of 5 small boxes vertically and 5 small boxes horizontally. So put together we have a 25 small boxes in a big box. So when we are measuring the amplitude, we have to measure the number of small boxes vertically. And horizontally, you have to measure the number of small boxes. You have to measure the duration. So the amplitude is vertical deflection, and the duration is horizontal deflection.
Interpreted through ECG.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yes.
T wave abnormality.
Yes, you had mentioned.
Yeah, the T wave abnormality is very particularly and very commonly used to measure the electric abnormality. All are right. Best thing what we can measure is to measure the action we can measure the potassium. These two things are very much important in the in the contractions or electrical transmission or the action potential of the myocyte. So we can measure the calcium, we can measure the potassium based upon the T wave. If the T wave is highly elevated, more than one third of the R wave, it indicates there is hyperkalemia, increased levels of potassium. If the T wave is very short and flat, that indicates low levels of potassium. If there is increased duration between Q and T wave, that means if there is a flattened, widened gap between the Q and T wave, that indicates hypocalcemia, low levels of calcium. And if it is very close to each other, we say it is hypercalcemia. So that's how we can able to measure the
Yeah, some students have asked, some participants have asked about some good books if you could suggest for reading ECG. Some students have asked about some books for ECG interpretation and ECG elaborate study.
There are very many books available nowadays online, and we have a very good book given by father of cardiology. We say veterinary cardiology, Harry Pillay. There are so many pocket ready reference books also available. So we can say basics of electrocardiography, electrocardiography, ECG interpretations. There are so many books. Any book on electrocardiography will give you the same. Nothing to worry about it.
Yes. Yes. One of the students has asked difference between pulse and heartbeat.
Anything else?
Difference between pulse and heartbeat.
Okay. See, the pulse is nothing but the cardiac wave that is generated. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
yes.
Sir, we can hear you. You are audible.
The pulse is the wavy movement that is in the peripheral arteries. And this wavy movement that has noticed that will be felt in the peripheral arteries, gushing off of the blood, and that is the systolic phase of the heart. So whenever there is a systolic phase, that is gushed into the major vessels, that is into the pulmonary artery. Because the arteries are elastic, the elasticity and some of the structures are present, like radial artery in case of humans and femoral artery in case of dogs. When the blood is gushing through these arteries, they will expand, and that expands as the, roughly speaking, the heart rate and the pulse rate should be equal, and the heart systolic phase should go in correlation with the pulse speed. So this is also very much important. When you are going to diagnose the heart diseases, we have to auscultate sometimes. Simultaneously together we have to palpate the vessel, the artery, maybe a femoral artery. So we should feel the pulse whenever there is a systolic beat. When there is a lump, we should feel the pulse there. So they should go both hand in hand. That is the clinical significance of the heart rate, of the heartbeat and the pulse.
One of the participants has inquired about the availability and contact detail of ECG machine.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
said costing
So,
8,000 rupees.
Yes.
The one which was
So
portable you
actually,
had shown in
that
the,
machine is not available in India, but we procure it from America or
Okay.
US. That machine is called Aleve Core, ALIVECOR, Aleve Core Cardia, KARDIA. cardia machine. It is a simple, it comes like a simple chip kind of thing, which with a CD or app that should be downloaded. And when you register in that, and you can start working for ECG. That's very user friendly, and you can assess it very quickly. And we have used it, and we studied this with the conventional electrocardiogram machine. So we could not find any difference between these two. Okay, so it is very pocket kind of ECG machine that you can carry anywhere, a mobile kind of ECG machine. So you can search it on Google, you will get it. Even the Amazon people are supplying it.
So, okay. So one more participant has asked about the list. Please list the normal length and width of wave.
Okay.
This you have already mentioned in your presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. So if
just say in one or two.
this is all about the gist of all the queries which the participants had posted. Again, the same question: does electrolyte imbalance can be interpreted through ECG? Please ask this question,
we already
madam.
explained.
This you have already elaborated, yes, and you have even included that in slide. That was very wonderful. So I think this has satisfied all the query of the participants, and now I request Dr. K.K. Mishra to extend a vote of thanks on behalf of Department of Veterinary Medicine, College of Veterinary Science and Animal Husbandry, REVA.
Hello.
Am
I audible to you, all of you?
Yeah.
Yes. You're audible.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me opportunity to convey the vote of thanks for all of us. First of all, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to the speaker of today's webinar, Dr. Satish sir, who gave us his valuable time and this wonderful presentation, which was really wonderful. And I hope most of the participants, including the students, will be enlightened in the area of the ECG and its interpretations in case of small animal practice. And I'm also thankful to Madam also for conducting this type of webinar so that it is a platform for all of us. And I am thankful to our Honorable Dean Sir, Dr. S.S. Thomas Sir, for providing us this opportunity to host this type of webinar at College of Veterinary Science and Animal Husbandry REVA's platform. And equally responsible are the people who are serving as the technical team for the LUAS team. I'm thankful to them, especially Dr. Sindhu and his team. I am thankful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir and our Honorable Dean Faculty Sir for getting us this opportunity to have this online webinar. And last but not the least, I convey my sincere thanks from the core of my heart to all the participants who have participated in this webinar. I hope this will be a long way to go still, and we all will be highly enlightened by this presentation, this areas, experience areas, and especially small animal cardiology. Thank you all.